You're on the air.
Please stand for the pledge.
Good evening. House of Prayer and Worship, 365 Hill Street. Mike?
All of the necessary variances were granted, and that is noted on the map. And just for the record, the restrooms are fully within the building now. There is no bump out on the back of the building, nothing like that. It's as soon as you come in on the left, I believe?
Correct.
Left.
The
All
left
my
front
comments have
or
been addressed, sir.
The left front or the left back? They were in the back
Front.
originally.
Yeah,
Front?
well, I'll explain why this
Okay.
happened, is the whole
Okay.
story.
Rich?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant did receive an email, so there were referrals that were made, general comments, Fire Department, Wetlands, DEP, Putnam County. They did receive a letter from the DEC indicating that there was freshwater wetlands permit needed, possibly a water quality certification, over 5,000 square foot for speedies, or stormwater. New York City DEP in the watershed, cultural resources, some information is needed for that. So the applicant will need to provide information regarding those permits. If that letter came from the New York State DEC. So prior, Joel, there were a whole bunch of storm tech units on the site. There's no storm tech units shown on the site now. I'm wondering why those have gone away. You've removed the porta potty, which was just earlier discussed. You know, how is this flow of sewage or water being maintained? Location of holding tanks, unit will be maintained, water to the unit.
No problem.
And Putnam County will need to, you know, chime in on that ultimately. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Pat? All of my issues have been addressed, Mr. Chairman. There was one question, Joel, if you could clarify regarding the pavement on the surface of the parking lot. Just clarify that for us.
All right, well, a lot of things have happened since that letter from the New York State DEC came, which Rich is referring to. Unfortunately, because of COVID, I have tried desperately for the last month or so to get a hold of the DEC to tell them that things have changed. Unfortunately, as of today, I've gotten no response. I've emailed them. But what I do have, which I think is even more important, which I'll hand out, these are two letters from the New York City DEC, which also has control of this, and Rich said is one of the agencies that we had to address and send our drawings to. So first of all, to answer the question regarding let's talk about the bathrooms. According to, this is Mr. Jason Coppola of the New York City DEC, he's indicated, and I'll hand out the information, that if we go with what's called pervious pavers and we don't put any additions on the back, we would not have to do all of the things that Rich mentioned that the DEC talked about, SWIPs and all this other stuff, and he would be perfectly satisfied if we went with pervious pavers and did not put any additions on it, because once you do that, once you start adding additions onto the project or to the building, that triggers so many other things. And, you know, obviously, the church has limited funds, and I think actually the situation that Mr. Coppola recommended is much better. Number one, I'm going to hand out these two memos from the DEP. One indicates that they will accept the concept of how, since we can't do a septic system because of the wetlands, they will accept what's called a holding tank. So once this will also go to Mr. Paravati at the Putnam County Health Department, who is holding up the permit for the well till he gets this letter saying that the holding tank is something that they will accept. And it has to be at least 1,000 gallons, and we have to give them the name of the company that will do the cleaning out every month, which Reverend Pastor Evans is going to be getting. And there's just a series of conditions that they require for putting in these holding tanks. Then to get back to what Pat was just talking about, I've contacted the company, Grass Creek, and it appears that they may have a unit that would be good good obviously because it'll be porous, pervious, excuse me, and also would be amenable to, for handicapped people who will go from their car up to the handicap ramp. So I'm going to hand these out so you can have it for your files.
Joel, just make sure that product is is approved for New York State, that's all.
No, I've already contacted them, and they're getting me the information, and, you know, before we sign on the dotted line, obviously, I'll let you
That's fine,
look
I
at
just
it.
want to make sure that it's
No, no.
not approved in Michigan and not New York, that's
No,
all.
no. So, actually, while I'm doing this, basically, that's the only, I think I've answered the questions that were brought up today. If there's any other questions that the board has, I'll be happy to answer them. Obviously, as Mike said, we did get all the variances from the zoning board. We should be getting our, I guess what it's called, accepting our application from the ECB on a week from today, as a matter of fact. So that's taken care of. Basically, it's getting the wetland permit from the ECB and the public hearing and the final approval from this board.
Well, that's not 100%, right? You need to get your permits, or at least clarify what the DEC wrote to you in that letter.
I'm going to give it out to you right now.
But the DEC, not the DEP, there's two different organizations.
Well, as I said.
You said you couldn't get in touch with the
Let me
DEC.
finish. What I said was, the letter that you got was dated, I think, sometime in January. Since then, the project has changed tremendously, and the amount of work has changed tremendously, which they are unaware of. So once I can finally get through them, I've tried to email them, I will keep trying, and then I think obviously they should have quite a different report.
So, no, I'll wait.
Right, so just, Joel, the freshwater wetlands aren't moving, so if you do any work within the 100-foot boundary, per the state on December 29th in their letter, you're going to need a permit for that. So that's something you need to address.
Like I said, I will contact the young lady from the DEC.
Joel, you need to wait till you buy a microphone, I'm sorry, but.
All right, so, and you'll also need whatever approvals from the DEP. A letter is nice, but they're going to have to review it and give you their approvals ultimately.
So this came on February 17th. I'm not sure about reviewing this right this minute, but, Joe, any reason you didn't make this part of your application, since it's over a month old, a month and a half old? It's kind of hard to review now.
No, I'm not asking you to review it. Obviously, we're going to be coming back for the board to respond to the consultants anyway. No, the reason for the delay was, after we got this, I didn't print it, foolishly didn't print it immediately. Then we had a complete breakdown with the computers, so I lost it. So I finally got a hold of Mr. Capola, and he was nice enough to re-email it to me a couple of days ago, and then I made the copies for you. But that was the reason for the delay. Okay, any other questions from the board that I can answer?
Joe, I got 3 pages of comments here. We're not pushing this through. So,
You got 3 pages of comments from?
from Pat, Mike, and Rich.
Oh, okay, I don't have, okay.
So what are you doing with impervious or pervious pavers? What have you decided to do, and where will they be?
Okay, what we decided to do, based on my conversations with the DEP, Mr. Capola, which you have there, we're going to go with pervious pavers throughout the entire property, or the driveway and the parking lot. So basically, that will mean that any rain coming down will be as if it was lawn. It's going to be absorbed into the ground.
That's in the memo you're handing out tonight?
That is, yes.
Well, maybe we ought to review this and put this back on the agenda some other.
No, I have no problem with that. No, I'm not asking for anything else. I know all this is coming new. Rich hasn't seen this yet, and obviously Mike and Pat haven't seen it. But I just thought, since all this came this week, I'd bring you up to date. And as I mentioned to Rich just now, that the memo from the DEC is back from January, and I tried to explain to them how all the changes, but unfortunately, I was not able to get through. So, yeah, we'll just ask.
Yeah, the DEC sent the memo on December 29th, identifying the need for the following permits: freshwater wetlands, water quality certification, speedies, New York State Department of Environmental Protection, and cultural resources. So you've responded to them on all 5 of those topics, or?
Yes, I sent them an email, and I tried to call to see that since the project, the scope of the project has changed tremendously, there are no more additions. We're not, we're not putting in these storm tech units, everything's going to be pervious, to find out if their memo is going to be revised, and hopefully I'll get that before the next meeting.
When did you email them?
Probably sometime in the beginning of March. Well, I mean, I called immediately, but nobody ever answers the phone.
Wait, can you send us a copy of the email and make it part of the file?
Of course.
And Mr. Chairman, the drawings would have to be updated as well, specification for the pervious pavers and so on.
Yeah, I understand that, but I wanted to make sure I got the right specifications, and of course, that'll all be on the drawings. So anyway, just ask that we hold this over till the next meeting so that hopefully we'll get responses from everybody, and then we can be in a situation.
I think at the last, I know at the last meeting, we were all very, happy with the work you're doing here. We're all thrilled that's going to be an improvement to the property. We think it's a historic site or
Right.
thereof. We just got to help you get through this hurdle.
I know,
We like what you did with the restrooms also. They started off outside, and this is a lot of good improvements, but there's too many agencies that are asking you questions right now for us to proceed.
I realize that. I'm trying my best.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure.
And
they'll do
with COVID, nobody answers the phone. You just leave messages, and you probably know that too. It's not easy.
Any questions, Vicki or Bob? Or anyone? Ray? Mark? Anthony? All right.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll
Good
see you
luck
see you in 2 weeks.
making your way through the process there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, on the Tri-County Coal, which is next, I'm going to recuse myself as I have a conflict with respect to that matter.
Thank you.
That's a conflict that I've alerted the consultants to, and they've worked with Town Council Fulchetti with respect to this application.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Tri-County Coal and Wood Pellets, 113 Old Route 6. I think this is the first time I've reviewed a coal program.
Joel Greenberg, this is my twin brother, just in case you want to know.
Mike, comments on this?
Yeah. Applicant proposes to legalize an existing coal and wood pellet stove and associated heating fuel, that would be the pellets and the coal that they sell there. Business off Old Route 6 in the town of Carmel. The property is in the Commerce Business Park zoning district. The permitted uses include commercial establishments and retail sales and services. There is a chain link fence along the buffer with the bike path that needs to stay. We need to make sure that's there. That's a very important buffer between the two uses. That's something that, maybe it should even be noted on the plat that stays. The two lots need to be merged upon filing of the plat. The back lot is actually a separate tax map number. By merging them, it'll make all of the nonconformities that would be setbacks go away on the back lot. The rear lot should be labeled storage area. It's kind of like having a lumberyard type use. The whole back area is their storage area. They got storage containers. They got all kinds of things in there. That would be helpful if they could label that. The storage containers that are partially on the bike path property need to either be moved onto the subject property or submit an easement or license agreement to leave them where they are. They are shipping containers, not buildings or structures. They are actually, they submitted a license agreement with the county, so that is all covered already. We got that after the fact. The canopies on the adjacent Old Route 6 right away also need to be removed or legalized, and again, they got the license for that as well. So both of the structures that are adjacent are okay at this point.
Thank you. Rich?
As Mike mentioned, this is formalizing or legalizing a site plan for the project. As long as there are no changes being made to the site itself, the department has no additional comments related to the project. The applicant should note that due to proximity of streams and wetlands, any future work will minimally require wetland permits. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Pat?
And Mr. Chairman, this is, as you've just heard, this is a legalization of an existing operation that's been in operation for decades, many, many years. There's simply no record of that. I think the property is transferring, so they need, as we've done in many instances in the past, create a site plan so that runs with the property so the future owners know what's going on. So the the reason why Mike is being so critical about the location of those ancillary structures is that they need to be documented where they are, so they're enforceable. At the moment, Mike has nothing to enforce anything against. That's why we're granting the site plan approval. There are no planning issues with this. It's literally legalizing the operation that's been there for many, many years.
The weird part is back in, I believe it was the 80s, they actually went through a process because I found ECB reports, complaints, I think, about coal, and coal is nothing but, I think, carbon, I'm pretty sure. Everything was unfounded. There were no problems. There was a bunch of other paper there, but nothing that showed that there was a site plan process. It's just very strange, so that's why it is where it is.
And I understand that the bike path allowed the storage containers there, and the storage containers were agreed upon to leave there, so that if it transfers ownership, will the new people have to move it, or are they entitled to leave it the way it is?
We'll have to look at the license agreement. Typically, it's associated with the operation, not an individual. So if it transfers land, ownership, it goes with the subsequent owners of the property.
And that's my understanding as well.
That's a standard license agreement.
We haven't had an opportunity, or you guys haven't had an opportunity to actually review the license yet?
No. But we wouldn't, in this case, it would normally be Joe. In this case, it's going to be Greg that would review that document.
I did review it, and I did read through it, but again, I'm not a lawyer, so, my understanding was everything was in place, but we do. And Greg did look at it. Greg had that also.
Yeah, I actually drove out there also.
Yeah, and for something like that, typically that's a condition of your approval. So that wouldn't hinder you approving something. It would just be a condition that needs to be established before Mike would grant that certificate of occupancy.
I mean, this plant's been there forever. The building next to it.
And they're not changing anything.
The building next to it's, I think, empty, the fitness club.
Right.
I guess a good thing is if it changes hands, typically we turn properties over, they improve on and so on.
The good thing here is we now have enforcement capabilities, something we don't have today.
Okay. Joe, why don't you give us, I don't think too many people are aware.
Okay, let me just, since the last subject talked about was the agreement, which I think some of them. I
Please
know-
speak louder into the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay. This was from October of 2002. And item number 3 is addressed to Mr. Napolitano from the Division of Planning and Development, signed by John Pilner. It says, "We're in the process of receiving parcels adjacent to Old Route 6. We will run the fence parallel to the bikeway instead of along the property line of that parcel up to the edge of Old Route 6. This is so that you may have use of that area for your storage containers and parking." And what this is referring to as Mike mentioned, there are 2 areas over here. This here represents the bike path, and this here represents the encroachment by the containers over here. So this agreement, again dated October 16th of 2002, gives Mr. Napolitano the right to leave his containers here. And the other thing they're talking about is this little piece of property here, which is also owned by the county. So this agreement, as Mike was saying, and I believe Greg has looked at it. I haven't seen any response though. So this agreement will allow him to keep, or actually in this case the new owner, to keep these containers in the same location as they are now. The other question that was brought up, we're doing absolutely zero. There's no work to be done on this. All it is, as the consultant said, is to legalize this so that there is an approved site plan and that the new owner can know that everything here is legal. But he's also planning on running this the exact same business as Mr. Napolitano. So that actually the way, if you've been to the site, what you see there now is what you'll see, for a long time. But as the chairman said, Mr. Napolitano has been in this business, in this site, in this business for over 50 years. How it fell through the cracks, we'll never find out. But we do have this, the important thing is that we do have this agreement for these containers over here and over here.
And the reason I said about the fence being there, it's very important to keep both of the uses separate.
Yeah.
That's all. It was just something that was, it really does make a lot of sense to have that there.
So obviously, any modifications, any work that the new owner will want to do, it has to come in front of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just as Mike said, these dotted lines here represent the connections between the fence. So That is obviously very important because you've got two very different situations. One, you have a bike path here, a bikeway, and here you have a lot of storage. So the fence obviously has to be maintained at all times to protect the bikers and the walkers.
And Mr. Chairman, just an interesting point with respect to this. I don't know when the last time you filled your furnace with coal, but this is a relatively unusual operation, and we were just talking about businesses in town. This is kind of a boutique business these days, so things that we can do to accommodate it is certainly a good thing for us. There won't be any new coal businesses in town,
Right.
that's for sure.
I
So,
see they do pellets also, but
Yeah.
still, it's probably small, you know, I'm thinking.
Right, for your wood
that's-
stove.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the new owner will be doing the same business also.
Just out of curiosity, who burns coal around here?
There are people, we give permits,
Really?
we give permits quite a few times.
Really?
City still burns coal, a lot of big homes and a lot of old estates.
Wow.
You know, believe it or not, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, it's quite a thriving business, obviously. I would assume that this gentleman who's purchasing it would not go into something like this knowing that it's going downhill, but apparently it's going up.
Very interesting.
So,
Questions?
very
from the
interesting business. I mean, I've been here 52 years, didn't even know it was there.
Joe, I have a question.
Sure.
Two storage containers,
Yes.
what are they? Are they C boxes? Are they locked up? Are they open containers?
The containers, yeah. What would you call that, Mike?
Are they locked at all times?
There are C boxes.
Yeah.
What's actually in the containers, not coal?
You know something? I honestly don't know. Oh, I'm sorry.
So Vicky's question was what's in the containers? Does anybody know what's?
Yes,
the
the
coal
coal-
stored in the containers?
Coal and the wood pellets, sorry, I said chips.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And I assume some stoves also, you know, things that they would sell would be in there also because it's dry. So if they had extra coal heaters or whatever they call them, I guess, coal stove, they could put them in there until they need to move them.
Is there any issue with refilling those containers at any time with coal? I mean, is there an environmental thing
No.
that
Nope.
needs to be concerned about? Okay.
Most of them are bagged, it's bagged coal, it's pelletized coal,
Oh.
and it's pelletized wood.
Right.
So you're basically moving pallets, 40, 50 bags of pallets, and they're stacked within. That's what they're doing there.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I assumed it was loose coal. I didn't know it was
Yeah.
bagged either, so that was a good.
I think they do have bins for loose coal, but they're not in those C containers. They
Correct.
are in.
The bins in the back,
In the
They
back.
have
Selfies.
bins in the back that they drive into, but the other stuff is pelletized and it's all bagged.
Any other questions? I like that it's going to turn over ownership. I think that's always good. And then any work that needs to be done with it to come back in front of us, right?
Yeah, the new owner's aware of that. If he makes any changes, he's got to come back.
And it's not a busy area back there, it's not a residential, so I think in this case, if someone wants to make a motion to waive the public hearing and prepare a resolution, we can keep this boutique business in town.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Before we vote.
I'm sorry,
So just
Go ahead,
clarify
Mark.
that the motion was to waive the public hearing?
does anyone second it?
I have.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So what's our next step now?
Right, you have a resolution before you, Mr. Chairman, you can take action on that tonight, or you can review it and return at your next meeting, whichever you choose.
I'll take action.
You got it, draft. No special conditions, fairly straightforward.
Okay. Next on the agenda is,
So you need a motion to,
oh yeah, I'm sorry.
yes, today, just today.
Yeah.
I'll move the resolution.
Bob made the motion to return. Yeah, you need a second.
Bob made the.
Actually, you have it, right? So,
I will offer the resolution of the Planning Board of the Town of Carmel, number 21-03, dated April 8th, 2021, for tax map number 55.12-2-12 and 14, Tri-County Coal Final Site Plan. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Is the third
Yeah,
brother
that
coming out?
What's that?
Third brother coming out?
I should have brought an extra tie, just.
Change your hat each. Wear the mask.
Next on the agenda, Jones and Haig, 66 and 72 Lockwood Lane for a lot line adjustment. Mike?
All the necessary variances were granted and are noted on the plat. All zoning comments have been addressed.
Rich?
The Town of Carmel Engineering Department does not have any comments regarding this lot line adjustment being proposed.
Pat?
And there are no site plan issues with respect to the lot line adjustment, Mr. Chairman.
This has been in front of us a couple times now, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
The reason it's coming back is we had to go to the zoning board last month to get the variance. That's why.
Okay, do we have a motion to schedule a public hearing? The reason why I say that is compared to the last one is a residential area, and I think it warrants a public hearing.
All right, I'll make a motion for a public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope I didn't bore you with talking too much.
Never, Joel.
Less is more.
Rose sent out the minutes of February 11th, 2021. Did anyone get a chance to review them? Does anyone want to make a motion to accept them?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wow.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Now record time.